All right, future proof. So glad to be here. Thanks for attending this panel session. Really appreciate it. It is called, as you can see, Blending Human Expertise with Digital Innovation. And I run a consulting company called Ezra Group, and that's something we do a lot, is blending human expertise with digital innovation. So I was excited when Matt asked me to moderate this panel. One of the things I like, I go to a lot of conferences. My favorite panels are the ones with really short intros. They just get right into it. So I'm going to do a really short intro. There was a great panel this morning, great presentation this morning from my good friend Michael Keatsis, talking about advisor productivity, which really is the main goal of when you're blending digital advice and human expertise. You're looking for improving productivity. So contrary to popular belief, advisors at larger firms aren't necessarily more productive. Keatsis.com research shows solo practitioners often manage similar AUM per advisor as enterprise firms. And technology adoption doesn't automatically translate into productivity gains. Firms with more tech tools sometimes show lower productivity, which is going to be a bit of a tough pill to swallow for some tech firms here. So I'm going to jump right into the panel discussion. I'm going to talk to Riddick first. So a Cerulli report recently said the average advisor to client staff ratio in the industry is around 1 to 4. Now, you told me that Savvy Wealth has achieved a much more efficient advisor to staff ratio by leveraging AI and workflow automation. Can you provide some context to that metric and how it compares to typical benchmarks in wealth management?
Absolutely. So I think just to provide some context, advisor to client or support ratio 1 to 4. What the number we're really looking at is what is the number of errors, how costly are those errors, because ultimately the ratio doesn't actually matter until as long as the work is getting done at a faster rate and also at a much more accurate rate. So to provide a little bit more context on this ratio, if you look at like some of the Accenture reports that augment some of the Cerulli data, roughly about there's an estimate that says about $1 billion is actually lost in errors in the back and middle office for wealth management firms. So the way that we look at this is what can we do to basically reduce the error rate, but also make it much more efficient in terms of getting the answer back to the advisor. So to do that, we actually said, well, it's less about the ratio because adding more people can actually cause more disparity, and actually more people is not necessarily the right answer. But if you can use software workflows and AI to do two things. One is just completely end-to-end automate certain things that you actually don't need. It's low level enough that you actually don't need a human actually looking at it. Or you augment the actual individual operations person that's actually looking at the work to make them much faster at doing the job. So those are the two areas we've actually gone deeper into. I'll pause there. Hopefully it gives some context to this as well.
I think that was great context. I'm going to change up the questions a bit from what we had planned because there was an announcement made before the conference that a little-known CEO of an RIA had invested in Finny AI. Can you talk about this little-known CEO and what was this investment and how will it change the way you guys are operating?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a funny story. Josh and I actually connected nearly a year ago already, and so right at the start of Finny, going to market, and he had booked a demo from our website, went on online, booked a demo, and I had started walking him through the product, and he was like, wait, let's back up. I'm Josh Brown. Let me, tell you a bit about how I typically engage with different fintechs, and I organize Future Proof, and it was an incredible conversation. I walked him through the product. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he liked it. And we've kind of been behind the scenes working, communicating, just keeping in touch for the last year. Finally, last December, we had reconnected, and he said, I think you guys are doing some pretty amazing things. This is a problem that a lot of people have tried to solve in the industry, which is organic growth and prospecting, and I think you guys are thinking about this the right way. I'd love to be a part of your journey. And so now he's officially invested in Finny, and he's on board, and I think not only having that credibility, but just his expertise. He's been around the industry for so long. He's well respected. He's made or helped a ton of other fintech, wealth tech companies achieve a lot of success. And so having him on board as an advisor is going to be instrumental, I think, in our roadmap over the next couple of years.
How was the PR sort of army team of Josh Brown coming in and overwhelming you, or was it sort of a smooth process?
I mean, they're pros, let me tell you. They know exactly what they're doing. We announced last Thursday, and our demo slots on our website went like this. Like now, I think through the next 8 weeks, there are no more available slots. And so within Finny, we're kind of like scrambling to meet that demand. But it's been totally incredible. Just the market response to Josh Brown's, backing has been beyond what we could have ever imagined. We've done, other announcements in the past, and nothing has been this well received. So it's been really incredible.
That's awesome to hear. So sticking with you, Ed, and so you had said at Finny, speaking of productivity, that Finny was able to 2x the productivity of marketing broker-dealer teams. So I'm a consultant. You got to show me. So what kind of details do you have to back up that claim?
Absolutely. And so for those that weren't privy to our pre-chat, that's something that I shared with Craig and Riddick was we recently worked with RIA that had a centralized marketing team, and they were able to basically 2x the productivity over their marketing team while using Finny and keeping the output and the results the same, which is honestly really significant. And so the way that they were able to do that is because pre-Finny, the marketing team was doing everything from generating a list of leads through, let's just call it ZoomInfo or LinkedIn or whatever sources they were on, creating personalized emails or messages or campaigns to send out to this list of people, monitoring it. I saw a stat, it was 41% of a business development rep time is just on prospecting, like very much just like top of funnel. And so if we take that 41% of their time and they spend it on Finny, they're able to achieve all of that, like prospect identification, prioritization, outreach in less than an hour. And so it's pretty significant. And I can actually share like a tactical example of this. I had this one firm, they are based in Los Angeles, and they ran a campaign, and it was really specific. It was Wharton alumni, business owners in a specific area within a specific, I think, revenue bucket of that business. And they were able to use an advisor who went to Wharton to send that campaign out on Finny. And they were able to get, I think, response rates of around 8%. And for cold outbound campaigns, that's pretty incredible. And so they were able to see really, really significant results, and it took them less than an hour to put that all together on Finny.
Riddick, any follow-up? I know you stopped your first question early, so you want to jump in on that?
I think the automation and AI enablement in marketing is certainly a big area. Maybe to complement some of the work that Eden and team are doing at Finny, there's the other side of the equation which we look at, which is collateral development, that we found AI is actually quite good at as well. So this is an example of you already have a prospect that you're discussing your services with. How can you deliver something that's slightly more tailored than just a generic one-pager as an example? And so that that second stage type of collateral is we've actually found that that's a really good area to use AI to actually help generate collateral that the advisor can then use and send it to that prospect. That tailors it to what the prospect wanted in the discovery call and kind of the tailoring it to those pain points, but also what are the exact services that the advisor is uniquely good at and kind of pairing the two together. So previously that might be, hey, you need a marketing firm, or you might spend a lot of time writing up a document that actually goes and you build all that material and you maybe have a template, but you actually using AI tools and some internal software we've made, you can actually just prompt it by articulating it exactly in plain English of what exactly were the pain points that were discussed in the call, and then exactly what you want the document to say, and it looks beautiful, is concise, and can generate that type of stuff. So another compliment in the marketing process.
Oh, thanks, Riddick. So that's marketing related. But let's talk about advisor productivity related. And we've all seen the statistics that 60 to 70% of advisors' time is spent on admin, not on client-facing activities. So at Finny, at Savvy, you have some AI tools that you say have have enabled advisors to get back to working with clients. What are those, and how are they helping?
Yeah, so there's tools across the board. I think I'll touch on 2 or 3 of them. Basically, I think the first one here is on just freeing up a lot of the administrative time. And so what we mean by administrative is anything related to some sort of a paperwork. And that could be spanning things all the way from client onboarding, portfolio management. It could be compliance related as well. So the way that we think about this is generically, any of those types of things might require documents of some sort or some sort of processing that isn't just clicking a simple button. And what we found is actually by developing AI that actually is just excellent at document parsing and also document filling and submitting, that generic workflow is able to actually free up a lot of time in that kind of, call it one segment of administrative workflows. That's one area. We've touched on marketing a lot as well, but that's another key area that you can just free up time as well. I'd say maybe a third one, which is interesting, is in the ability to just work more ad hoc with clients. You're doing a lot of work that might be answering an email, for example, or doing some sort of research. Another excellent area that AI is actually quite good at, and the thing that you need over here is that the amount of data that you can train the AI, which might be the advisor's historical emails and the way that they write things, or all of the client's assets in all of the history to understand, what are the different kind of points in the portfolio that they had to change over time, or the financial plan as well. Those are key inputs that actually let you tailor the AI's responses to the end client. So we see by doing things like that, you can actually generate emails or responses that are about 80 to 90% there, so it actually cuts down the amount of drafting and editing time quite a bit as well. So some of the examples there, generally I think our estimate is we've freed up about between 11 to 19 hours in a given week for an advisor. It's a wide range depending on the different use cases, but we think that's actually pretty impressive to get that advisor time back.
I'm going to want to see that data because if all the AI tools tell me we're saving 10, 15 hours a week. I'm not working. I've nothing to do, right? It's all my work is done before I even start the day. But it's clearly saving some time. But I want to throw out to both of you when it comes to these tools and the efficiency gains. How do you frame it with advisors, and how do you position it with them? Because everyone's thinking AI is going to solve all their problems, and it can't solve all their problems. So what's the way you position it with your advisor and saying, here's how you can use this tool?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question because one is the efficiency gain, obviously, and then what a lot of advisors really care about is, well, how is this actually going to benefit the end client? Like, how is the client relationship going to change? And I know we talked about this earlier as well, and it's all good when it's internal tooling, but it's, how is the client going to be benefiting is a question I know a lot of advisors are talking about. And so I can answer within Finny, and then I'm happy to hear within Savvy, but within Finny, a couple of ways that I think the end client can really benefit is having that white glove personalized service from the very, very first touch point, I think is of utmost importance. And I always joke that picking a financial advisor is almost as important as picking a partner in life, because it's 25 years on average of that relationship, which is longer than most marriages. And so you don't want to start your marriage with a generic email that says, hey, and insert first name, this is how I can help you. You really are expecting to have that white glove personalization, thoughtful first interaction. And I think using AI, using all this data that is now available, you're able to really make sure that the end client is getting the right message at the right time from the right advisor, really making sure that they're getting that service, not just once they're already a client, but pre-conversion as well. And then the other obvious one that I think is super important is the more that you create these AI tools to create efficiencies, you end up giving time back to the advisor to actually serve their clients. And I think that's incredibly important as well.
Yeah, I think the benefit to the end client. So I think there's three variables that we look at. It's effectively speed of response, error rate of response, loosely defined, and then the other one is time spent in front of client. And so effectively, you want to decrease the amount of time it takes, so increase the speed, right, to get the response back. And we think you can do that by effectively, if you can automate parts of the workflows, then effectively the advisor or any support member that is servicing the task for the end client can actually get the answer done faster. So that's nice. The second one is error rate. I mean, obviously, this one, you want to get it at zero, as close to zero as possible. And so we think end-to-end automation is helpful, or augmented tools are helpful, rather than just throwing more people at the problem. And then the third one, which I know we were just talking about, is spending more time with the client. There's some research and data, and I'm sure you can find data for a lot of things here, is that if you have the same outcome that an advisor delivers to the end client, but they just spend more time with the clients are happier, right? I mean, it's just it's kind of the same thing as bedside manner at the end of the day. The more time you're able to just spend face-to-face alleviates a lot of the concerns oftentimes. And so we actually think that if the back end or the back office type of automation frees up the time to spend more time in the quote-unquote front office in front of the clients, then you're just driving a better experience, even if the outcome's the exact same. So those are the three kind of variables that are beneficial.
Cool, thanks. I wanted to go back to a previous answer you gave, Riddick, about how easy it is when you're prompting the AI to get the answers you want. And to me, I'm a little not bothered by that answer, but I hate chatbots because it turns everyone into prompt engineers. Now, I have a degree in computer science. I don't mind tweaking a prompt for an hour to get exactly what I want, but I think most advisors and most normal humans, don't want to spend all this time in a chatbot tweaking the English language prompt to get what they want. How do we get away from that and make AI more functional from the get-go?
Yeah, this is a common kind of problem. So there's two things that we've found. One is our core philosophy is you want to meet the individual where they work, right? And what does that mean? So if an advisor is used to sending emails to an assistant or someone internally, or they're used to using Slack, for example, to send a message, you want to still promote that behavior. And it can still be plain English language. It could be bullet points. It could be, hey, here's an idea, or whatever it is. And effectively, the conversion from something that is the same as how you're communicating today to, could be an assistant, could be to someone else in the company, needs to get converted into something that is the quote-unquote prompt engineered version so that the chatbot or the new AI models can understand it. So that conversion step is actually where we focus on, because you don't want to spend a bunch of hours and days and weeks trying to train people to speak in computer language effectively or prompt engineering. So that's one area that actually helps. How do you convert the actual English into something that is optimized for the prompt? And there's a number of things you can do there. We're happy to go into that. Or the second one is simply that even if you're not actually exposing the prompt interface to an advisor, the other benefit is that you can still gain efficiency in a firm by helping internal individuals with better tooling. So for example, a client service associate in the company or an investment operations associate can have a tooling dashboard that they're able to actually leverage rather than having the advisor actually kind of focus on that as well. So both those are leverage points that we found is avoids having to train people on prompt engineering.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, because Craig, what you just said resonated really well with something that we just went through at Finney. Our original version of the product actually allowed advisors to search our database in natural language, so in English, using a prompt. And as engineers who are building the product, we got super excited about this. We're like, this is so cool. You can use English and natural language to search our database of 300 million individuals. And so as techies, we were really, really excited about this. It turns out advisors were not. They just want, or at least some of them just wanted good old-fashioned drop downs and search bars, and we didn't need to over-engineer it and make it so complicated. And so what we actually perceived to be this huge advancement was actually just adding a barrier. And so I totally agree. There is a level of fatigue around chatbots and natural language, and sometimes just sticking to the simple search is the way to do it.
Yeah, give me a good old drop down and a checkbox, right? I don't want to have to type.
Nothing's wrong with a good old drop down.
All right, I'm gonna switch it up a bit. I'm gonna give you a tough question, Eden, but let you pitch a little bit. So, you've got a proprietary F-score matching engine to analyze thousands of data points, liquidity events, career changes, and other money and motion signals to identify high intent leads. So this is what a lot of prospecting tools are doing. I work with Michael Kitces on, if you've ever seen the Kitces Ezra Group logo map, it's on thekitces.com. We work on that every month. Every month since OpenAI came out, we're seeing another lead gen tool, another prospecting tool with AI saying, we're going to capture money in motion events. We're going to send them customized emails. God forbid you have a money in motion event. You're going to be flooded with emails. How are you doing this better? Obviously, Josh Brown's endorsement is a big step in that way, but how are you doing it differently than all the other prospecting tools out there?
Yeah, and I think that's such a valid question because I have seen the map getting more and more crowded every month. And so I think the way that if you had to take away one line of how I think we're different from a lot of the other prospecting lead gen platforms, I would say think of it as an all-in-one platform. And so the key problem we're trying to fix here and solve for is we're not adding to another set of disjointed tools that you then need to plug into your email, then plug into your MailChimp or your Interseller, then plug into a set of within Finney. You can actually reduce the amount of platforms you have to switch into, and so you can do everything from identifying the leads and the money in motion events and everything else to crafting the email, and you end up losing a lot less data. And so being that one-stop shop, I think, ends up saving them a lot of time and is a lot more effective. We're also taking a slightly different approach, I would say, where we really don't believe in spray and pray. And so the last thing we want to be is another spam engine where advisors are sending thousands of emails per day. Within our platform, we have pretty strict limits on emails sent per day and contacts sent, and a lot of it is around the prioritization and the matching. So we've put in a lot of emphasis on this idea that given where you went to school and what you do for fun on the weekends and everything else about the advisor, we can actually predict whether you'll get along with that prospect. And so if there's 100 advisors looking for people who recently sold their business in Miami, they'll see different lists based off things that we already know about them. And so I think that's also like a bit of a differentiation.
Do you break it out geographically or say, hey, we're going to give you this segment of the market or this segment of the market, or it's sort of just the algorithm handles it?
A bit of both. So advisors can actually choose to opt into certain, locations. So you can say, I want this zip code, pre-retirees, who went to, Harvard, and you can limit it by zip code or location, or you can just leave it open-ended and let the algorithm kind of optimize it for you.
That is cool. I like that. All right, over to Riddick. So we saw a recent report from Deloitte that AI could boost productivity in wealth management by up to 30%, and you mentioned 11 to 19%. So are there other areas that you see that you could leverage AI to make advisors more efficient and deliver better client experiences? So focus on that.
Yeah, I think what we found is that 11 to 19 hours in a week, and assuming an advisor's working 40 to 50 hours in a week, it's roughly kind of somewhere there. So I think we talked a lot about like operational efficiencies, which are always good. I think there's the two other areas where we're starting to see some benefit of AI that are actually that drive additional client value. Are number one is around financial planning specifically, and number two is in what I think is now also become a crowded market of all of the meeting summaries, follow-ups, task management, and execution. So maybe just on the second one first, there's a number of players out there that are doing just summarizing meetings that are happening between the advisor and client. And what we found is that the ability to take the summary is almost table stakes. You basically need to be able to do that really, really well. And then what we're able to do is actually extract out tasks that the advisor needs to do, right? Because you have the entire context of the client and history in one system. And then from there, you can actually effectively what we call agentify the AI, where it actually goes and executes and actually spits out the work of the task. So as an example, maybe there's something is discussed in the meeting where you have there's something discussed about opening up a new account. So that's in the summary. Great. The task is extracted out. It's also inputted directly into the CRM. Says, great, open up a new account for X client and for this purpose. And then the next step from there is effectively you actually execute on that without the advisor having to fill out the paperwork as well. And that's effectively the agent AI equivalent, right? So we think of that as that's adding value to the client because, again, the speed and accuracy of it is effectively instantaneous. The other one around financial planning, the interesting part about this, there's effectively two things that we found in the early tests that are actually helping financial planning get more AI-ified, is how we say it. The first is the actual execution of generating financial plans, if you really think about it, is basically just doing a ton of scenario planning. And the ability to do a number of those, run those scenarios and generate those reports, we find is that advisors have it in their head on what exactly they want to get out of it, or maybe they have it in a summary because they discussed certain goals that the client has. Being able to translate that and actually run and execute the financial planning analysis automatically in this more agent approach is producing some results in maybe some of the more simpler financial planning cases. But also you can just do that in real time over time as well, where maybe the client says, hey, this is a new life event, or maybe this is a new goal that happens, and you can just automatically update that. And the advisor's job just becomes to having to review it, make sure it actually matches what was heard, rather than spending the time button clicking and actually running the analysis. So two areas we think are interesting.
I don't know about the audience, but I hate the word agentic. I just don't like it. It rubs me wrong. It sounds it's like overly complicating something that should be simple.
It's effectively, it sounds really awkward to say out loud. I mean, it's effectively just making making AI operate on multiple steps. I mean, you could call it AI workflows at the end of the day. And it's just like a fancy word, but multi-step AI processing.
And do you see that ever replacing advisors? So you talk about financial planning. If the AI can pass the bar and it can pass the CFP, at what point do people just talk to the AI and cut the advisors out of the loop?
Our core belief here is that just never will happen, and there's a lot of like human psychology behind this. I won't bore the audience on all the books and studies that show what happens in the brain about thinking about finances, et cetera. But basically, the thing that there's two things that are actually really difficult to ever replace. Number one is that we actually don't think AI will ever get to be 100% accurate. You do need some level of just verification because there's some subjectivity that is involved in anything financial related, other than just pure execution. The second one is also, the equivalent of bedside manner. The ability to explain something, right, whether an outcome is good or bad, is actually a very, very uniquely unique aspect of financial advisory, and you can't have an AI just spit that out. And this goes back to the human psychology of, thinking about finances is an anxiety-inducing thing where you actually need someone to actually explain it to you. So that's our view.
I'm going to put the panelists on the spot. We've talked nonstop about AI, but this is a human expertise and digital innovation panel. Give me something, Eden, that's non-AI related that you see has helped merge human expertise with digital advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I can talk about a couple of success stories that I've seen and share, advisors using our platform at kind of using that, merging their human expertise with our tools, and have seen like some pretty incredible results. And so what Finny can do is we can automate the content for you, and they can prompt it and come up with the ideas. But then ultimately it's up to the advisor, once there is an interested response, it's up to the advisor to close that business and show up to the meeting and relate to that person. There's only so much we can do pre-meeting to prep them and to, optimize that meeting, and then it's really up to the advisor. And I would say I've seen a lot of advisors get very, very creative for that initial touch point to really optimize, and I've seen like really, really interesting and great conversion rates like from that first meeting. Some of the highest ones I've seen are like 80% conversion from that initial meeting from a cold outbound, which is quite. And I'll
Did
share.
you say 80?
80%. I'll share this anecdote because I think it's quite interesting. I have this advisor, and I share this story a lot. He's okay with it. I have this advisor in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. He specifically uses Finny to find people who recently moved to Jackson Hole or bought property there. So we do that work for him. He then sends an email. The email content says something along the lines of, "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood. I've been here for 20 years. Let's grab coffee. Let me show you around town." He gets them to the meeting. He meets with them up in person, let's say the coffee shop on Main Street. And there's such a degree of familiarity. He brings them to his local restaurant. Maybe they know him there. Maybe he's representing himself as like the local whiz. And he's really selling them super well. And an AI will never be able to do that, right? Like there's such a high level of like EQ and like, emotional relation that he has with his clients that he's meeting, and so he's seeing those 80% like conversion rates from those meetings, and so that's a really good example of like the AI doing some of the work, and he's really making the touchdown.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
In person.
Yeah.
Riddick, non-AI related at Savvy Wealth, you're running an RIA and a tech firm at the same time. Non-AI related ways to merge human expertise with digital advice.
Yeah, we always ask ourselves, how much AI do we actually need? And the honest answer is that a lot of things you actually don't need that level of AI or workflow automation sometimes. I think an easy one here is when advisors are sitting down with clients to do a quarterly or annual review of their portfolio. A really easy one is leveraging just a digital view of everything, right? And this is, I think, getting much more common, where you can effectively just show the individual client, here's what the portfolio looked like throughout the year, and you kind of have this time series graph of showing what all the changes and the life events happened. And that's a really easy way to show using a digital interface. No AI necessary, just needs to look and feel and be easy to explain to a client. But the actual words and the things that are actually being said in that meeting are actually highly impactful, where you're not having to spend time sifting through pages and pages of stuff trying to find the right graph. You can actually just show them in real time something. So that's something that's actually, I think, a really easy and good example of merge digital and the human touch, and you don't need any fancy AI to do any of this stuff.
That's a great one. I like it. We're down to 11 and a half minutes in this panel. I wanted to throw out to the audience, do you have any questions for the panelists before we continue on down our road here? Any thoughts about what we've mentioned? Yes, sir. Let me repeat the question. When you talk about AI panels, is it just generative AI, or are there other forms of AI you're referring to?
Yeah, AI is such an umbrella term, and so you can use it. The way that we use AI is some degree of generative when we generate content. We also use large language models, which power AI, to make sense of a lot of data and then categorize it, and so to help score leads or to help find data about leads based off unstructured data. So if there's a news article that is coming out about a potential prospect or a business sale, we take that, we use large language models or AI to then make sense and put it into like an Excel, for example, so structured data, and that's a really good use of AI that is not necessarily generative either.
Very, very similar. Generative is just one aspect of it, but exactly. I mean, we have a ton of black box models that basically are nothing to do with generative or large language models. It's what we call old school AI that is able to do things like prediction and lead scoring and things like that, for example, as well. And I think it's gotten overloaded at this point. Of anything generative or anything AI now is effectively has to be some ChatGPT equivalent generative type model. But actually, there's a ton of just more traditional AI that's been around for decades that is actually quite good at stuff that's outside the content generation realm.
Yes, sir. Go. State your first name and your question. Wait, so Trent's question is the Finney waitlist going to ever end? Will you ever be able to get a demo? Trent wants a demo.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Jake, you can get a demo tomorrow if you'd like. Yes, right now our demos are more or less booked for through the next 8 weeks, and so we're working internally. We're very quickly scaling up our resources specifically to be able to not have an infinitely long wait list and serve people very quickly. Right now, if you wanted to get started, the soonest we can get an RA started is maybe 4 weeks, so it's not terribly long, but we are working on shortening that time down for sure.
So now we want a demo this week.
Yeah, the future-proof special. If you're here, we can get a demo in this week.
You heard it here first, folks. Future-proof only. So, yes, sir. What's your first name and your question? Oh, we're really getting technology-wise here. Julie wants to know about quantum computing. What do you think, guys? Quantum computing, how's it going to affect us? I didn't expect that question, Julian, honestly.
It's an unsatisfying answer. I actually don't think it's very relevant right now. I don't have I don't think there's much to worry about or how it's going to impact us.
I can answer that question. So what I would say is that it can solve problems much faster, but we'll also have to worry about encryption. That's been the biggest worry about quantum computing for many years, is that it can possibly break the encryption that we all take for granted now, 256-bit. If you've ever seen your SSL or HTTPS when you log onto a browser, that's using a very standardized encryption with a certain number of bits of the password, because it will take 1 billion years of a regular computer. But with a quantum computer, you could possibly break that in a weekend. So that's what I think in general, any industry that requires security, like financial services, should be worried about quantum computing. And we need another level of encryption capabilities, maybe doubling or tripling the number of bits that we're using for the passwords and for the encryption keys to make sure that the latest quantum computers can't break that. More questions? Yes, sir, in the back. What's your first name and your question? And I will repeat the question. So you want to know if the assistants, the advisors' staff should be worried about losing their jobs to AI?
I would say not at all. I think a lot of the tools are just geared at making the assistant's life better, more manageable, less frustrating. And so any of the low-level, kind of low-skill tasks they spend their time on right now, like data entry, processing files, things like that, will be automated. And I can speak for Finney at least, our goal really is to help the advisor bring on more clients, so it actually would add work to the assistant's plate. And so hopefully they're able to then scale up their practice with less back office support needed. So I think the assistant might be able to automate some of the tasks that they might have to do, but it wouldn't, at least I don't see a world where AI is fully agentic and is totally replacing the need for an assistant. It's just making their life a little less difficult.
We get this question quite often, and I have a I'll give you the answer, and then I'll give you the more kind of academic answer as well, which is very similar, where we actually design a lot of tools for the assistant as well, because we think that that is actually a way to give them more superpowers and actually get them to be able to be more efficient with their time. Now, you might think of it as, well, that means you just need to hire less folks in the industry, and so what happens to everyone else? It's not meeting the bar. More from an efficient market perspective, if you believe that capital markets stay the exact same and everyone has access to capital in the same dollar value, each firm has access to the same dollars, then theoretically, every firm should be incentivized to basically double, triple, or quadruple their capacity at managing clients, and therefore every assistant with additional tools should just be able to manage and actually get work done faster with the tools they have access to. And so you still would be incentivized to hire as many assistants as you did in the past. Otherwise, you'll be left behind versus the other firms that are using the capital base to actually go and make themselves more efficient. So there's two ways. There's like a reductionist way to view the world in AI, which is basically saying, hey, well, jobs will be cut. I actually view this as like, hold on a second, we can just triple our output and beat all the competitive firms out there, and I would much rather do the latter, and I'd imagine all the best firms are going to do that as well.
I think you're going to see a scaling, as Riddick mentioned, whereas similarly to how tech firms 10, 15 years ago needed $1 million or $10 million and 100 people to launch an app that was going to get any scale. And then 5 years ago, it was 10 people and $1 million. Now it's one person and $100,000, and they can launch an app, and it's going to get scale because of all the tools that are available. So I think there will be more firms that are scaling up, more solo advisor practices that'll be able to scale up to $1 billion without having to hire a lot of staff. Any more questions from the audience? We're down to 3 minutes left, 4 minutes left. Anybody? Any thoughts? Okay. So, Ed, and to you, in 1 or 2 minutes, you are building an end-to-end platform, as you mentioned, but we're seeing more clients want outreach. They want more proactive interaction with their advisors, not wait for them to call me. So how do you see your tools and your platform doing more of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something we're seeing a lot of demand for even already. And so historically, we've been really focused on like getting you new clients. And what we're seeing a lot of demand for from our existing RIAs and customers is, great, now I have clients, how do I serve them better? And so I think you see 53% of clients who leave their advisors typically do so because their advisor hasn't been proactive enough with the outreach. And then when you talk to advisors, they're like, what do you mean? I've been sending them newsletters every week. And it's like, yeah, you've been sending them generic newsletters that probably aren't even relevant to them. And so they ended up going to someone who feels more white glove. And this advisor sends me personalized emails all the time. Well, they're probably using AI. And so I think one thing we're pretty excited about is helping advisors actually deepen the relationship with a client, win more share of wallet with their existing client base, really get warmer in that relationship by monitoring life events, by monitoring just current events, and making sure to reach out at the right time. And on a personal level, I think I shared this with you both, but so I'm a Canadian American, I have a dual citizenship. Obviously, in the last couple of months, there's been this like massive buzz around this trade war going on and tariffs, and I was left with a lot of questions. What do? I have assets here, I have assets there. Like, well, how should I be thinking about this? It would have been so easy for me to get an email from my advisor saying, hey, as a Canadian American, as someone who grew up in Canada, I'm sure you have a lot of questions. This is our stance on this. This is what we're thinking about. This is how we're dealing with it. If you have more questions, let's get on a call. Here's my number. Such an easy way to deliver value. And it's not hyper personalized. They probably have already been creating that content. Just find out which Canadians or who has a Canadian relationship in your book of business and reach out to them. And that's just such an easy way to deliver value. And that's what I think Finny will be doing very soon.
Riddick, a minute and a half. How do you be more proactive as an advisor?
We actually have a product we launched a year and a half ago. It's effectively a co-pilot, where it actually is a good example of a non-generative AI model. So this is effectively using inference to determine if an advisor should reach out to someone, or basically their touch points or the number of touch points has been off track with an existing client. So it's basically looking at, hey, you should go and talk to this client. It's been longer than average, or there's something that's happened in the portfolio that's a little bit abnormal. Maybe you should look at it. And so that's another variant here where we use that to say, look, this is the person that you should go and contact, and then the advisor can look and make the determination on, okay, here's what I should do, and personalize the outreach rather than sending some generic newsletter to every single person. We found that to work quite well because it's basically triggering or a notification for the advisor rather than saying, hey, the AI is automatically going to figure out what exactly it should do and reach out to the client directly. So that certainly has helped.
Fantastic. And please give a round of applause to our two panelists, Riddick and Eden, for being and sharing their expertise with us.